Hey guys, Sean from Note Cycles. Today's video, we are introducing the brand new Infinity 4-speaker plug-and-play system for your 2014 to 2023 Harley-Davidson Street Glide or Road Glide. So whether you have a factory radio or an aftermarket radio, this Infinity system will work and makes an excellent upgrade to your factory Harley speakers. Infinity has come up with an amazing, fully plug-and-play 4, 6, or 8 speaker system for your Harley-Davidson Street Glide or Road Glide. We will be doing the 4-speaker system in our 2016 Street Glide. So what that's going to consist of is a set of 6.5s for the front fairings with the included crossover and grills. The 6x9 bag speakers, now they will come with the cutouts as well as the rear grills. A 4-channel Kappa Perfect amplifier, which is going to be 75x4 at 4 ohms or 125x4 at 2 ohms, and all of the necessary plugs and power wire needed to complete the installation. Now, what sets the Infinity Kappa Perfect system apart from others is it comes pre-packaged and pre-tuned with the Saddlebags DSP, as well as the amplifier mounting plate. So what the DSP is going to do for you, especially with your factory Harley-Davidson radio, is it's going to automatically reflash your radio to a flat output. So the Saddlebags DSP and interface will come already with your factory Harley-Davidson male and female plugs. It gives you 6 channels of output from the DSP, as well as a 31-band graphic equalizer per channel. Has built-in selectable crossovers per channel, high, low, and bandpass. It has a time delay circuit. It retains all of your balance and fader control, and it also has a wireless tuning setup and control through an app from your smartphone or tablet. One of the nice things about the DSP is it's encased in a waterproof case, so you won't have to worry about it in the front of your bike. So if you're looking for an audio upgrade for your 2014 to 23 Harley-Davidson, this is it. Fully plug and play. They have thought of absolutely everything and give it to you all in one package. So let's go over some of the tools necessary for completing our entire installation. We're going to want to have some wire ties, as well as a pair of side cutters, a panel popper or panel removal tool. We're going to need a T27 and a T25 Torx driver, as well as a Phillips head screwdriver, 3/16 Allen, and a T40 Torx on a manual or electric socket. Now, these tools are what's required for our 2016 Street Glide. Your bike may require some other tools depending on the hardware on your bike. So please always look over your bike, make sure you have all the tools necessary before you begin your installation. Now that we've seen everything included in our Infinity Kappa Perfect Street Glide bundle on the table, it's not doing us much good there. Let's get to the bike, get it disassembled, and get this installed. So now it's time to go ahead and remove the front fairing. You're going to have 7 total T27 fasteners. My personal preference, I remove the 2 outers, loosen the middle, hold that to the very end, remove that, and then remove the fairing. So let's go ahead, start removing the outside fairing. Move that one. Now I'm going to just loosen this up a little bit, but that's still on. So now we have these loosened. We have 4 T27s on the inside of the fairing, so let's go ahead and get those 4 removed. Okay, these 2 are removed. Let's go ahead and to the other side, get those 2 removed. So now that we removed our 4 T27 fasteners from the inside of the fairing, we can come back to the front. So you want to get it most of the way loosened up. Remove your windscreen, set that in a safe place. Once the windscreen is removed and safely stored, go ahead and finish removing that final T27 bolt, removing it and just sliding the front fairing off. You'll remove your headlight plug, just lift up and remove. Make sure you store your fairing in a safe spot. So now that exposes a lot of the inner workings. We have our radio, we have our front fairing speaker pods, which we'll be going over in a little bit. We have all of our wiring, everything that we would need to install any kind of aftermarket amplifier, DSP, so on and so forth. So from here, let's go to the seat. Now your seat's going to be different on all the bikes, depends on what you have. Mine just have a single seat. It's 2 5/8 bolts that are holding the back of the seat down. So I'm going to go ahead and remove those 2 5/8 bolts, slide the seat out, expose the battery, the fuse box, that kind of stuff there. So let's get that seat taken out right now. So now we're at the seat. Again, I don't have the rear seat on. If you do, you'll probably remove that first. But I have 2 5/8 bolts holding the back of my seat on. So I'm going to go ahead. I have an electric socket wrench. You can use a manual, doesn't matter. So let's go ahead and get these removed. One. Now that both the bolts are off, we can just lift straight up and slide back. Once that's off, that exposes my battery, exposes my bolts that I need to remove the gas tank. So we'll move to the gas tank next, show you how to get that off, how to undo your petcock, and get that removed. So to remove the gas tank, we have a couple of T40 bolts, 2 in the back, 1 right here underneath this plastic cover. I'll go ahead and take that off so you can check that out. So 1 right here, 1 on the exact opposite side, and then we're going to have 1 plug that we need to remove, and then we also just got to be careful of the vent tubes from the gas tank. So one other thing, the petcock is located on the clutch side, so just have to remember we have to have that undone before we can actually remove the gas tank from the bike. So before we begin removing the bolts, I just want to unplug the 1 plug. We can slide out the vents. There we go. Now again, 2 T40s, 1 on each side. We can go ahead and get those out. So there's 1. There's the second one. Now that those 2 are out, go ahead and move to the front, get this one removed, and then the one on the exact opposite side. Last thing we need to do is remove the petcock. I would suggest grabbing some kind of shop towel, rag, paper towel, anything like that, just because there will be a little bit of gas that drips out or is released once you remove it. So let's go ahead, get that out, and remove our tank. Had a little bit of gas drip out, no big deal, kind of what happens. So now everything is disconnected. We have all of our vent tubes and our wires disconnected. You know, just be very cautious when you're lifting this, especially if it has a lot of gas in it, but you're just gonna pick it straight up and put it somewhere safe. Once the gas tank's removed, that will leave the spine of the bike open. That's where power wires, speaker wires, anything like that can be run down to your battery. So now that that is exposed, we can go ahead and remove our saddlebags. Very simple to remove for the most part. Again, your bike may have something a little bit different. Mine just has 2 turn locks and it'll pull out. So the easiest way to do that, open, grab your pins, turn them, and then sometimes you gotta, there we go, and then just release. Saddlebags, exact same thing as the other side. You do the exact same thing to release. Lift up, get out of your way. So now that we have the bike 75% disassembled, we're gonna go and start removing the speaker pods in the front fairing. It's a little more involved. We have to take a little bit of stuff apart. So we're gonna go ahead, do that next. So now our bike is pretty much apart. We just need to get to our front fairing speaker pods. Now's a good time, if you haven't already done it, do something to protect the front fender, just in case you drop anything, or when you go to install an amplifier or DSP or anything like that, it doesn't fall and hit. So from here, we're gonna go ahead and just start kind of getting some stuff out of the way. So we're gonna cut some wire ties, and then we're gonna need to remove the fresh air vent by removing the 2 T27s. There's one on either side, that'll slide out. Then we're gonna need to remove some of the bolts holding in this stuff to the side of the pod. And then there are 3 9/16 bolts that are pretty hard to get to and very hard to video. So we're gonna kind of try to get you some sort of visual on them. And then lastly, we have some Allens to take out, and then this will slide right out. So let's start with getting everything out of our way, popping off any of the connectors that are on and attached to the pods, and start by moving the fresh air vent. So just remove a couple wire ties if you have any. Again, it would depend if you have an aftermarket radio or a factory radio. So we'll kind of get that out of the way. We have the speaker connector. Make sure we get that unplugged, and then remove any of the things that attach. This is your power plug. Just pull that straight out, and then you can remove that from the pod. And then we'll also pop off the speaker plug. Moving to the other side, same thing. We just have a couple less plugs. So remove anything that's attached. You may need a panel popper for this. Pop that out. So now everything is off of our pod. Here I got to remove the camera. So I'll unplug that, get that out of the way for now. We'll move the GPS antenna off of the plate. So next I can go ahead and remove the 2 T27s from the fresh air vent. So there's one. And number 2. So the fresh air vent will just slide backwards and out. And while I'm here, I can go ahead and just move my antenna, kind of get that out of the way. Now that the fresh air vent's out of the way, we can start by removing the 4 bolts that are holding in the side of the front fairing speaker pod. Ours has 2, yours may have 4, so there's one here, one back here, and then on the other side in the exact same places. So we'll go ahead and get those out. That's a T25. So there's one. number 2. So now I can see that that's come away a little bit. That's a good thing. So from there are 3 9/16 bolts that hold the bottom part of the speaker pod to the actual frame of the bike. Now, I'm going to take these out first. Then we're going to come in close and you're going to see where they actually are. It's just easier. There's really no way to get good video of them coming out. So let's get those out and then I'll show you exactly where they are. So now we got our 3 bolts out from the bottom part of the speaker pod holding into the frame on either side. Lastly, we need to remove the 3 3/16 Allen heads holding in our actual speaker pod. So there is one here, and then one down here. So let's get those removed. So all 3 of those are out. Now we can go ahead and just remove and unplug our speaker pod. Exact same thing on the other side. Same 3 Allen heads. So now we have all 3 of those. We can go ahead and remove our speaker pod. Now that our bike is completely disassembled, we can go ahead and begin the installation of the Infinity Kappa Perfect plug-and-play system. We'll start by showing you how to mount the speakers and crossovers in the front fairing pods. Then we'll go to the saddlebags and get the 6x9s installed and wired. So let's go over to the table and I'll show you that now. Now we're here at the table. We've already removed our factory Harley-Davidson speakers out. We're going to go ahead and install our new Infinity Kappa Perfect speakers. Now up front, it's a 6.5 with a tweeter as a coax. Now Infinity has thought of everything and they've included it in their kit. You get your crossover with the proper tabs to plug directly into your factory wiring inside of your speaker pod. So to start, we're going to go ahead, get our crossover unwrapped, and then plug in. Now you'll notice on the input side of it, the bigger one is negative, the smaller one is positive. You'll see the same 2 things on your factory speaker pod. Bigger is negative, smaller is positive. Go ahead and get those plugged in till you hear the click. So now those are in. So now is the time you can choose if you want to, wire tie, use any kind of cleanup method. I'm going to go ahead and just use the wire tie that I had on here just to keep them together. So then that leaves us with 2 separate plugs. You'll notice on the back of the speaker, you can independently cross over each side, the woofer and the tweeter. So the biggest thing is you just want to make sure you plug in the correct side. So here we have the woofer, which is this side. There's going to be a larger and a smaller plug. Plug them into the corresponding slots. Then grab the other one, which will say tweeter, positive and negative. Again, one larger, one smaller. Plug those into the corresponding spots. Then we can go ahead and slip our speaker in. line it up so it matches the factory holes. And then they've also provided all your screws, everything you need to get that installed. So we'll go ahead and just start each one of these by hand. And you can use a handheld screwdriver, you can use a power screwdriver. If you're going to use a power screwdriver, be careful on how much you torque it down. I usually get it most of the way down with the power screwdriver and then just make sure it's tight with a handheld Phillips head screwdriver. Make sure I don't strip out the plastic. And that is one done. So we'll go ahead, move on to the other one. Exact same process, exact same thing. You're going to wire everything up and plug it in. Starting with our input. Go ahead and throw that wire tie back on. Grab our speaker. So we have the tweeters first. Plug that in. Now our woofer side. Put that down in. Get it lined up with our holes. There we go. Start our screws by hand. And then go ahead and screw it in. And then just tighten it the rest of the way with a hand screwdriver. And now both of your front fairing speaker pods are installed. So now we can move on to the saddlebag speakers. Now, if you haven't cut your saddlebags as of yet, don't worry. Infinity provides you with the cut template. And if you haven't ever seen anybody do it or watched a video, I will link a video down below so you can check out the way I did it. So now for the saddlebags, again, these have already been cut in a previous video. So if you need to watch that video, it's down in the link below. As far as mounting the Infinity 6x9 covers and brackets, let's go ahead and show you how to do that. So we're going to go ahead and take our saddlebag, kind of flip it upside down, grab our grill, slide it underneath till it matches up. And then we're going to take our 6x9 adapter, get that slid into place. Now again, they provide all the screws that you need. You're going to want to make sure you use the Phillips head screws with the flat top. Those will be what mounts the grill to the 6x9 adapter, and then they will mount on the inside. So one there, one will go down in here, one right here, and then one over here. So let's go ahead and get those all located and in. So we got those two in. Just tighten those up a little bit. Kind of keep everything in place. Now these two are kind of hard to get to, so you're going to want to make sure you have a handheld Phillips head screwdriver. Go ahead and just get that in there. Start it by hand. And then the last one will be in this back corner here. Just drop that one in. You can use a hand screwdriver, power screwdriver, doesn't matter, just be careful. You don't want to over tighten it. And then always go over all of them by hand. So let's just flip it up, make sure it looks good. So it looks perfect, lines up, no gaps anywhere around. The Infinity logo on the back, and we're good. So from there, go ahead and grab one of our 6x9s, doesn't matter which one. So here's where you kind of have to decide how you're going to run your wire. You know, you're going to go underneath, are you going to go around, how you're going to do it. So once you have that figured out, again, Infinity provides all the screws that you need. Going to go ahead and grab 4 there, and then we're going to drop them in. Now it's a little bit more difficult getting these started because you're going to want to lift up and make sure you're in the correct spot. There we go. Let's go ahead and just tighten those just down a little bit, not too much. Then we'll do the inside ones. And then the back one, which is probably going to be hard to see on camera, which is way back here on the back side of the speaker. Just got to be a little careful getting it in. That's why I leave that one for last. Then go ahead and make sure everything's tightened down. And then use your hand Phillips to confirm. So now we'll flip it up. Make sure it looks good. Speaker looks good in there. Show you what it looks like. Clutch side is done. We can go ahead, grab the brake side saddlebag, do the exact same thing. Other saddlebag, like I said, it's going to be the exact same process to install the speakers. Spin it. Go ahead, grab our grill, slide it behind. There we go. Take our adapter ring, grab our 4 mounting screws, get those started by hand. Again, you just want to be careful that you don't over tighten them. Go through each one, make sure it's tight. Double check, make sure we didn't miss or have anything. So our speaker grill looks great. So now we can fold it back down, go ahead and grab your 6x9. Get it set into place. Then use the other remaining 4 screws. Get those started in there. Just tighten those down a little bit. And then last but not least is this rear one here. Get that one in there. And then finally, just a hand Phillips to confirm tight. And then we'll check out the final product. So now you have your Infinity Kappa Perfect 6x9 in your bag lids. So now we're done with that. We can start with the front of the bike, start with some wiring, the DSP, and we'll go over some of the features of the DSP. We can start running our power and ground wire to the back battery, as well as our speaker wire to the bag lid. So now that we have all our speakers installed, we can go ahead and get ready to start mounting our amplifier, our DSP, as well as our new street glide speaker grills. So for a lot of this stuff, this is all just little things that we have to do. So to mount the amplifier mounting plate, we'll remove these 4 T25 Torx, then place our mounting bracket right back on and bolt those back down. As far as our speaker grills, it's 3 T25 screws on each speaker grill. Pull those off, put the new Infinity grills right back on. After that, we'll go over the DSP, how to plug that in, where that kind of goes, and what it does. And we will begin to run our power as well as our speaker wire back to the rear towards our bags. So this is our amplifier mounting plate, comes included in the kit, depending whether you have a street glide or a road glide, they're both included. So again, it's gonna sit just up in here like that, using the factory bolts to hold it down. So let's go ahead and remove these factory bolts. It's 4 T25s. Get those all out. And we're just going to go ahead and place that and drop that right in. Making sure we line it back up with those factory screw holes. Get each one in, then we'll tighten it on down. So now we can maneuver it a little bit, make sure we can get it adjusted. Go ahead and tighten those down. That'll give us a nice flat surface to mount our Infinity Kappa 4-channel amplifier to. Now that's in, nice and solid. Also gives us some areas to wire tie to, get things out of the way. So from there, we can go ahead and install our new Infinity Street Glide speaker grills. Again, 3 T25 screws, hold those in. So just go ahead, they're pretty small. Just be careful with those. Remove that, remove our factory grill. Now we have our new Infinity Street Glide grill. We'll just go right back in with the logo facing towards the bottom and get all 3 screws back in. Again, being careful not to over tighten the screws. There's that one. Now we can go ahead and move over to the other side. Get this one. Remove our factory grill. Get our new Infinity grill mounted on there. And same thing, just tighten them up, being careful not to over tighten them. So now we're done with the amp rack as well as the speaker grills. Now we can move on to getting the DSP set up, plugged in, and we can go over what that actually does for you. So next we need to install our Saddle Tramp DSP. Now this was specifically tuned by Harman for the Infinity Kappa Perfect system. Great thing about this is if you are running a factory radio, it will reflash the OEM curve to perfectly flat. Gives you 6 channels of output from the DSP, as well as a 31 band graphic equalizer per channel. It's got built-in selectable crossover per channel, so you have high pass, low pass, and band pass. It's got a time delay circuit built in, retains all your balance and fader controls, and it even has an app that you can log into and tune it from your phone. The harness is 100% pre-wired and ready to go, and it's got a waterproof case so you can stick it just about anywhere and not have to be concerned if you get caught in the rain. So let's get the Saddle Tramp DSP installed with our aftermarket radio. So first thing you're going to want to do is remove any wire ties. So what we are mainly concerned about here are our input and output plugs. So we have aftermarket radio in here. We're going to go to the factory side of it, unplug it. We're going to grab the side and then plug that side in, and then just plug the other factory style side back in, locking it into place, making sure it doesn't come out. So we just went over how to install the Saddle Tramp DSP to an aftermarket head unit. So let's go ahead and show you how to install it with a factory head unit. Now, one of the great things about this DSP is you no longer need to take your bike somewhere to get your radio flashed. It will flash it automatically when you turn your bike on and set all the EQ curves to flat. So let's go ahead, get this plugged into our factory Harley-Davidson head unit, and I'm going to show you how to do that now. Now, before we begin, we want to make sure we have our male and female harness that was included in the kit ready to go. First, we're going to push in the little button, sliding the handle towards the back of the radio all the way till it releases. Then we can grab our male side that's included with the DSP, get that lined up, push it in, and then slide that towards the front of the fairing, making sure we hear that click. And then we're going to take our factory harness to our aftermarket DSP harness, plug these in. Just want to be cautious and take note of how the pins are in the female side of the harness. You want to make sure that matches up exactly to the factory side of the harness. Once you go in, plug it in, slide the locking lever back, making sure you hear that click, and then you'll be able to go ahead and put that away. Now, once you've completed the install and turned the bike on for the first time, the Saddle Tramp DSP will automatically reflash your factory radio, and you will be good to go. So now that I've showed you how to hook up on a factory radio, let's continue with the install. So now our DSP is plugged into either our factory or aftermarket head unit. So now it's time to kind of go through what we're going to do next. So included in the box with the amplifier mounting plate is a large Velcro piece. You can choose to use that to mount the amplifier down. If you want to screw it down, you can do that. Just be extremely careful, and remember your radio is directly beneath that. However you want to mount it is 100% and completely up to you. So the DSP has the ability to run 1, 2, or even 3 amplifiers. So you're going to have a front, a rear for the tour pack, as well as an output for the subwoofer. Since this bike was a 2-speaker system, we're actually going to have to run a new set of speaker wires back to the rear, but we'll run that when we run the power wire. So let's go ahead, get that piece of Velcro, get that mounted down, get our amplifier mounted into position, and we can start plugging it in. So this is the piece of Velcro that comes included in the kit. Again, it's just Velcro. So we can go ahead and mount that on our plate here with the sticky side down. Just position it wherever you would like. So now that's down, so we'll grab the amplifier, use a pair of scissors, cut a piece of the other side of Velcro just to stick our amplifier down. So let me grab some scissors. So I have the amplifier, just have that sit there momentarily. And we'll just go ahead, cut a piece of Velcro for the amp. And then we'll take that, mount it on the back side of the amplifier, and then we can mount the amplifier down. So now it's steady in place. As far as our DSP, we're going to be using the front 2 inputs, the green with a black stripe, purple, and purple with a black stripe will go to the corresponding plug on the amplifier. And we'll just plug that in. And then the white with a black stripe, gray with a black stripe will go to the corresponding plug on the other side. So there's that. Now on our output side, we have the 3 that we will not be using. So this is our second front input for lowers, our second rear input for the tour pack speakers, and our additional input and our additional signal for our subwoofer or anything else you want to use it for. So from there, we need to find our actual speaker lines. Again, they're the white, gray, purple, and green. So in this case, since we were a 2-speaker bike, we're only going to use the white and the gray section. So that'll plug directly into the amplifier. We will, again, not be using the green and purple, but what we will do is in the kit, it comes with a new rear speaker harness to run down the spine of the bike towards the back. So let's go ahead, grab that speaker harness, as well as grab our amplifier power harness, so we can begin to run that down the spine of the bike. The speaker wire for the new speakers in the saddlebags, as well as our power wire. One of the nice things that Harman thought of ahead of time is actually split it out initially. So if you want to add lower speakers or tour pack speakers, you can actually do additional amplifiers, or you can buy the correct kit, which is, you know, a 4-speaker kit or a 6-speaker or 8-speaker kit. So let's get our speaker wires plugged in and our amplifier plugged in and begin to run that down through and down the spine of the bike. 2 different plugs. This will go to the amplifier. This will get run back towards the back side of the bike, and they are even labeled as belt side and then brake side for the other one. So let's go ahead, get that run. So first we'll plug it in, and if you want to run back to front, you can do that as well, but we're going to kind of grab our wire, run it right behind, and then just pull it through, leaving a little bit of slack up front so we can do some cleanup later. As far as the power wire, exact same thing. We're going to go ahead, slide it right through. And then just pull, and then you can plug in either connector, doesn't really matter, just plug it in and just confirm that we have the same colors on both sides. So we have our ground, we have our power, and then we have our remote turn on. So the remote turn on will actually plug directly into the DSP. So you can go ahead and plug that in just so you don't forget. So now we have our amplifier plugged in, our DSP plugged in. Now we can start wire tying and running the power and the rear speaker wires. So running wire on your bike is a relatively easy thing to do once your gas tank and your seat's off. All we really have to do is remove the cover over the factory wiring on the spine. Easiest way to do that is panel tool, plastic metal, and you just kind of get it under each of the little holders, popping them out. And there's about 20 of them. So once you pop one side, you can usually just lift up and remove it. So that'll reveal all of the factory Harley wiring. So from there, we're just going to set this down. We're going to go ahead, grab our wiring, and just place it inside the factory cover. Kind of get it down there. Now we're going to wire tie it, all that kind of fun stuff. So before you begin wire tying any of this stuff down, you just want to make sure you have enough extra that if you do decide to do the secondary amplifier, so on and so forth, you have enough room to get everything mounted. So first I'll start on this side, get wire tied to the factory harness, and then I'll just come down through and kind of continue to wire tie it all the way down to the battery area. Now, they do provide a fair amount of extra wire. That's mainly because this kit is also used on the Road Glide as well. So we're gonna have to, you know, kind of get this out of the way and hide it behind the battery and in some areas that are not visible. So let's go ahead and grab our wire ties and our cutters. We'll start getting that wire tied and run. After that, I'll show you how to connect the battery, and we will hide some of the extra wires, and we'll get our rear speaker wires in the approximate locations of where they need to end up. So here we have our rear speaker wire, and we have our power and ground. These are factory harnesses, so we're just gonna go ahead, grab our wire tie, and just wire tie our new wires to the factory. So have it up, and we'll go ahead and do 2 of those. So I'll get that one kind of under. There we go. And we'll cut off any excess. And then we'll just roll the heads back around so we don't hit them, or we don't hit them on our hands and cut our hands. So from there, we're gonna go ahead and begin running and wire tying our speakers down towards our battery. So we got the front part of our wires all wire tied. Now we can just kind of move on down through, just making sure that it stays inside of the factory wire chase. And, you know, get one every 6-8 inches, something like that. As long as they stay put. So I'm just making sure. There we go. So get that one tied down. Go ahead and get this last one. That nice and neat like that. Cut the excess part of the wire tie off. And make sure you roll those cut parts down, again, so you don't cut yourself or your mechanic. So now we're in our battery area. We need to move the ECU to gain access to our battery. So on this particular bike, it's 2 T40 torque bolts holding down the ECU bracket. So we'll go ahead, we'll remove those, get the ECU up and out of the way, and then I'll show you how to connect your power and ground wire. Pretty simple. Red goes to positive, black goes to ground. The fuse is already installed from Harman. After that, we'll go ahead and get our speaker wire plugs run to the appropriate area. So let's go ahead. I'm going to grab that T40, get the ECU moved up and out of the way, and we'll go ahead and connect our power and our ground. We've got our T40 on our electric ratchet. Go ahead and just remove those 2 bolts. Set those somewhere safe. So now we will lift up, move the ECU kind of out of the way. So that will reveal our Harley battery. So positive is on the clutch side, negative is on the brake side. So once we get our power and ground moved down in, and again, you know, you can kind of do that however you would like, as long as it remains, you know, in that chase. So you can kind of slide it down into the battery area. So we just kind of get everything fished in there. We will wire tie everything once we're all done. So we'll get our ground connected, and then we'll get our power connected. On this bike, it's a Phillips head bolt holding down to the battery. So let's grab our Phillips head screwdriver. Go ahead and get that unscrewed. So once you remove the bolt, you want to be extremely careful, making sure that anything that was connected will be connected once we put our ground wire back on. So in this case, I have a battery tender. So we want to make sure that both the amplifier ground, the battery tender, and the bike's ground are all connected. Get those started by hand. And then we can go ahead and tighten that bolt back down. Making sure it won't come loose, but I have my amplifier ground, my battery tender ground, as well as my bike ground. Once we have our ground tightened down, we can move to the other side of the battery, get our positive and fuse holder connected to the battery. It's the same process as the ground. Phillips head screw, pull it out. You're going to want to, again, be careful that anything that's currently connected to that battery is connected once we put our fuse holder on. So let's go ahead, get that fuse and power wire connected. So now our power wire is connected. We can go ahead and do some cleanup on that. We're just going to get our fuse holder wherever makes the most sense for you and get it wire tied. So we're just going to get it down below, but somewhere that you're still going to be able to access it in case you ever need to service it. So I'm going to go ahead, wire tie it here to one of the main harnesses. We'll just grab a wire tie. Then go ahead and cut that end off and roll the cut side back. So now we have our power and ground hooked up to our battery. We can go ahead, throw our ECU bracket back on, put those two T40s back in. So let's do that. Making sure that you connect and drop that ECU bracket on correctly. You're going to want to remember that there are a couple plugs that will connect on top of the ECU bracket. One is for our brake lights, one is for our gas tank. Once we get our ECU bracket back on, it's lined up. We can go ahead, grab our bolts, and get those tightened back down. Once we get those tightened back down, we're gonna get our speaker wires run to the approximate location of where we want them. So let's get that tightened down. Grab our T40. And then we can go ahead and get that settled back in there. We can go ahead and get our other gas tank plug settled in on the other side. Just like that. So now our bracket and our ECU and everything is back in. We can go ahead and deal with our speaker wire, get those run to the general locations of where we need to be. So let's do that next. So now we have a good bit of excess speaker wire. Nice thing is they're already labeled. They're labeled, again, like I said before, brake and belt. So Seems like we have a fair amount of excess. So what we're going to do with that is we're just going to kind of get our wires to the approximate locations that they're going to go for the bag lids. So approximately there. So some of this excess wire we can go ahead and wire tie and secure away. Cut that edge off. We're gonna stick it right down next to that plug. We still have enough to get to our bags, and we can put any extra that we still need to have put away. So once you have the wires in the general location of where you want them, we can go ahead, stick our wire chase cover back on, get that all set back in, and it's the exact same way as you pulled it off. You're just going to snap it and click it back in, making sure all of your wires are underneath. So starting from the front, I hear that click, click, stick the cables back in and just kind of run down the side. Again, making sure all the wires stay in there. So there, click. So now the wire chase is back on, our speaker wires are run, our power and ground wires are run and connected. So now from there, let's go ahead and get the saddlebags remounted and wired. There's one more thing we have to do before we can completely do that, and that's we're gonna have to drill a 3/4 inch hole into our saddlebag to pass the wire through. Now it is a waterproof pass through, so you shouldn't have to ever worry about water getting in there. But let's go ahead, I'm going to show you how to do that, and we'll get those saddlebags mounted. So now we need to drill the hole to get our waterproof connector into the saddlebag. So for that, you're going to want a 3/4 inch drill bit or a unibit that will go to 3/4 of an inch. So on this particular one, it's about 2/3 of the way down. So this bike already had an aftermarket system in it with saddlebags, so there's an existing hole, but you can kind of see approximately the best location to go through. Again, you can make up your own decision of where you want to go in, but we're just going to use this pre-existing hole, open it up to 3/4 of an inch so we can pass our speaker wire through. So pretty simple, just drill it out. So let's just confirm that we're at 3/4 of an inch. Give it a little more. Set that to the side. Clean up any of the extra stuff that are in the hole. Then we can grab our speaker's wire. And we're gonna pass that inside. And then we'll have to open it and just kind of wiggle it in. Now we've got our watertight connector and plug into our saddlebag, so we can actually go ahead, get our saddlebag remounted and start making connections both to the speaker and cleaning up some of the wire and securing that inside the saddlebag. So now's the time to go ahead and do the other saddlebag, drill that one out, get that plug in and set, and then we can go ahead and move right into remounting our saddlebag. So again, just like you took it off, very simple. Slide it on, line it up, and then you're just going to grab your pins and get them into position, turn and lock. So now that is on there. Same with the back side. Grab your pin, turn it, and lock. So once your saddlebag is on and secured, we have some wire that's just kind of sitting here. I would suggest getting the small wire tie holders that have double-sided tape on them. I'll show you a closer up picture here in a second. To get the wires and the wire nice and neat on the top part of the box to your speaker, so they're out of the way, so you can still use most of your storage. So let's go ahead, show you those, get those wire tied, and get our speaker all plugged in. So these are the wire tie hold downs. They give you the ability to run wire ties and secure. Double side tape on the back. Just make sure before you install these that you know exactly where you want to put them, as well as clean the inside to make sure they stick. So I already have 5 placed from a previous install. So we're going to continue and just use those. So now we can go ahead and wire tie our wire nice and neat around the top of the bag lid and get it plugged into our Infinity Kappa 900X. So from here, go ahead and start getting some of your wire ties in. So I like to just kind of slide mine in, get them ready through each of them. So now I have all but the very first one ready to go. So get that one slid in. So now we can just kind of get them started. The whole way around. And the last one. And then we can just start tightening them all the way down. Making sure they're nice and tight. Go ahead and grab this last one. So now we got our wire run. Last thing we really need to do before we connect our speaker is just cut off all the extra ends of those wire ties. So now we've cut it off. So now we can go ahead and connect our speaker wire to our Kappa Perfect 900X. So making the connection between the amplifier and the speaker, you'll have your purple and your purple with black. Purple with black will go to your negative. So slide that in, push that cover over, and then the positive of the speaker will go to the purple wire. Again, just slide it in, and then slide the cover over. So now we have the crossover that we can deal with. You can wire tie it, you can slide it underneath the bag holder, however you want to do it, completely up to you. So other than that, our bag lid is installed. Go ahead and close it, lock it up, make sure it doesn't come off the bike at all. We're good there. So now we have our connection to be made. So we want to make sure, again, we have the side that says brake. So our plug is sitting just outside the saddlebag. We're going to go ahead, make sure, again, it says brake, and we're going to plug that in, making sure we hear a click. So there's the click. Now as far as running it, some of the bikes are different depending on your particular model and your accessories. You know, for the most part, you can always slide it right here. And then we can just, again, we'll finish our wiring once we get our other saddlebag on. So we got our first saddlebag done. Let's go ahead, move to the other side, get this saddlebag done. Exact same process to install it, put the locks in, put the wire ties on, cut them, mount them, plug in. So let's go ahead and get this other saddlebag done. Now our saddlebag's locked into place. Again, the process is very, very similar to the other side. We're just going to go ahead, get our wire run, and get it to the area of our crossover for our Kappa Perfect 900X. So let's go ahead, get those wire ties in and secured, and get that speaker connected. So get them all into place. And again, how you choose to do this is up to you. This is just my preferred method. So I've got all my wire ties into place. Go ahead and start just getting them locked into place, but not fully tight. And the final one. So we'll go ahead and give us a little bit of slack, and then go ahead and tighten all those wire ties up. Then we can cut off all the ends. And don't forget to get those cut ends kind of out of the way. So now our wire ties are cut and out of the way. Let's go ahead and make our connections to our Kappa 900X. So on the speaker, you'll have a green and a green with black. Green is your positive, so we're going to slide that onto the bigger. And then the green with black will go to the smaller one. Slide that in. Make sure they're connected. Perfect. So now again, just like on the other side, you can hide your crossover wherever you would like. You can wire tie it to the speaker, put it underneath the flap. Again, completely up to you. I usually just tuck it underneath the flap. So now it's out of the way. I can still store stuff in the bike. So from there, close it up, lock it. So we have one last connection we need to make, and that is the connection between the amplifier and the saddlebag itself. Again, just as in the other one, you're just going to plug it in and make sure you hear that click. So I'm clicked in and tightened up. So then we can just kind of stick some of the excess wire down and around, making sure that they're both good. So now we're done installing the speaker wire, the speaker, the grills, the cutouts, everything on the bags. We are 100% done with the bags. So now we can move to reinstalling our gas tank, getting the petcock plugged back in, bolted down, and then we can go ahead, get our seat back on, tighten that back down, and then we'll move to installing the pods back in the front fairings, and then we can give the new system a test. So let's go ahead, get the gas tank on, get the seat on, and we'll do that next. So I've got my gas tank. It's time to set it back onto the bike. Just be careful. You're just gonna slide it in and right on, kind of lining yourself up with all of the factory holes and bolts. I already have my bolts here, so I'm gonna go ahead, and as I'm still holding the gas tank, it shouldn't tip or teeter at all, but I'm gonna go ahead and get these bolts in while I'm still holding it. So we'll get that one started. Do the same on the other side. There we go. And then we can go ahead and get this front one started. You may have to lift up just slightly on the gas tank. And then finally the one on the exact opposite side. So now they're all started. We want to make sure, really before we go any further, that we don't forget our plug. So we're going to plug our plug back in, making sure we hear that click. And then we want to run our vent tubes how they were when we pulled them out. So now we got our plug plugged in, vent tubes are out and down. So now we just need to tighten up our bolts and then put our two covers on the front. So let's go ahead and grab our T40, get those tightened. And then we will slide the cover back on. There we go. Now we can move to the other side of the bike, get the other front one installed, and get that cover back on. So let's get this side tightened up. We can go ahead and get the cover placed back on. All right, cover's back on. We can move to the rear two bolts holding the gas tank down. So let's go ahead and get those tightened up. And this one. So now our gas tank's installed. We can go ahead, grab our seat, get that installed, and get that mounted down. Now I got my seat. I'm going to go ahead and get it installed. A lot of our seats are all different, so you'll remember during your disassembly how to reinstall your seat. So for me, just slide it, lock it under, and then get it there. I have 2 5/8 bolts that go on. Get those down. Grab my 5/8, getting that one tight, and then get that one tight. So now gas tank's back on, seat's back on. One last thing you do not want to forget is plugging the petcock back in to the gas tank. So again, guys, remember you may have a little bit of gas spill, so you want to have something there to protect. But we're gonna lift this up, stick it in, and then let it drop back down. So up, in, down. So now it's locked back in. Tiny little bit of gas came out, no big deal. So now the petcock's back in. We can go ahead and move to the front of the bike and let's get our front speaker pods in. So first we can grab our correct speaker, depending on what side you want to start on, doesn't really matter. We can get that lined up. So it's lined up, everything's good. So just go ahead and start putting the bolts that you removed back in. You can start however you would like to get, at least one started. Get it tightened just a little bit. Like to get one started, but not fully tight, so I have the ability to move it around and get everything in. So once you get one a little bit started, go through the rest of them, get the rest of them just started. Again, you may have to move the pod around a little bit. The last one up top. So those 3 are in, but I still have the ability to move it. So now I'll go ahead and get the bolt into the side here. Just kind of get that one started. So now we're a little bit tighter, and then we can go ahead and move to the 3 bolts that hold on the inside. So we'll start the first one here. And get that one started. So from here, you can go ahead and just click back in any of the plugs that we're holding, including the speaker plug. There we go. So before we tighten everything all the way down, we're going to go ahead, get the other one on, and get that one screwed in, and then we'll tighten them all down at the same time. So we'll grab our speaker. Slide it in, get the first one started. Go ahead and grab our other 2. Get that one started. And last but not least, this one. Still have the ability to move it around. Grab our bolt for the side. Get that in, and we'll grab our bolt for the bottom here. So from there, go ahead and plug in our speaker wire. And we'll plug in our power outlet. And go ahead and get those pushed back in. So now we got everything in. We'll go ahead and tighten all the bolts at one time. Starting with these 3 that connect to the fairing. Again, it's your 3/16 Allen. Go ahead and just tighten that up. Not too tight, but snugged up. So now that's snugged up. We can grab our T25. Now in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and slide, pull the amp up, just kind of get it out of the way, and then tighten this. Now again, you may have 2, you may have 4, ours has 2. And then last but not least, you're going to go ahead and tighten up all 3 bolts in here. Make sure you replace the 2 uppers as well. Won't show that on video because it's very, very hard to see. So now we can move to the other side, do the exact same thing. Again, starting with the 3/16 Allen. Get each of these tightened. Go ahead and tighten up this one here. Again, T25. That's tight. And now the 3 that are underneath connecting to the frame. So now our speaker pods are back installed in our front fairing. We can go ahead, take a look at some of the crossover and gain settings on our amplifier. Then we can start cleaning everything up, turning it on, giving it a test, make sure it sounds the way we think it should. If we think it needs a little more gain, we can go ahead and adjust it there. If we're happy with it, we can go ahead and start packing up and securing all extra wires and getting everything put back. So let's go through some of the adjustability of the KP 5004. So first here we have our input level. So we'll have it set on high level because we are not using RCAs. If you were using an aftermarket deck with RCAs, you would switch that over to low level. Next, we have our front level gain. So that is adjustable, so we can actually turn it however we want. So that's all the way down. Clockwise till it stops is all the way up. I usually start at about 50%, kind of go from there. Also, because these are brand new speakers, you want to give it a little bit of time to break in. Some say that that's just a myth, but it's just the way I've always done stuff. On the other side of the wires here, you have the rear level gain. Again, let's just see where that sits right now. Go all the way down, all the way back, and then right in the middle. So down low here, let me see, I'd move this a little bit. So here we have our front high pass filter. Right now it's off. We can set that to about 80 Hertz just to protect those front speakers. Next, we have the rear high pass filter, again, set at 80 Hertz. We're actually going to go down and set those to 60 Hertz because they're 6x9s. And then we actually have what the crossover is, whether it's off, high pass, or low pass. We're going to go ahead and slide that to high pass. So that will block any frequencies below the frequencies that I selected here on the amplifier. So now that we've gone over briefly the controls of the KP 5004, we can go ahead, move it into its final position, but still leaving us room to adjust any gains as necessary. So we're going to get that moved. We're going to go ahead and reinstall anything that we deinstalled or removed on the initial disassembly portion, and then we can start getting some of the wires cleaned up, wire tied, and out of the way. So let's go ahead, get the amplifier up off the Velcro, kind of slid up into position, but I can still get at any of the settings that I need to get at. So now I'm good. So I'm going to go grab our wireless transmitter for our camera, get that back installed and back on the bike, as well as begin to start wire tying everything up and out of the way. The only thing that I removed from our bike on the disassembly was the wireless camera receiver. So I can go ahead, get that back in. I want to make sure I plug it back into the plugs that it was plugged into, as well as plug it back into the camera port. So now I have all that. So now we have to decide how we're going to hide and wire tie everything. Now again, depending on your bike, what you have in there, this may differ for you. For me, I'm going to go ahead and slide the DSP into here so it stays out of the way and a little bit more out of the weather. It's waterproof, doesn't have to be back there, but that's just the way I want to do it. I'm going to go ahead and grab some of this extra wire that I am not going to currently use. So this is all the extra stuff. We'll go ahead, grab a couple wire ties, just make them nice and neat. So get them nice, cut off the ends. And then that's going to sit back with the DSP as well. kind of up and out of the way. So now what I'm left with is the rest of the wires, the extra power cable for a secondary amplifier, for your lowers or your tour pack speakers. So what we're going to do is just kind of get it all cleaned up. Make sure we re-plug that in so we can kind of run some extra stuff up here, wire tie that, and then we're going to use some of the cable loops on the amplifier mounting plate to wire tie the rest of this stuff up. So let's go ahead and do that now. So get that wire tied. Go ahead, get some of this stuff up here and out of the way. Finish kind of looping everything up and getting it wire tied. Lastly, just get the extra power wire zip tied. So now we've got it mostly out of the way. We really just want to now be able to give everything a test, take a listen to it, make sure all the speakers are working, make sure fade and balance are correct, and then make sure anything that we unplugged, we plug back in, and that is also still working. So let's cut these wire ties and then hop to the front of the bike, give it all a test, see how it sounds, and then we can move on. If we don't have anything to adjust, go ahead and put our front fairing back on. So now we're on the bike. It's a good time to test all the features, fade, balance, make sure you're happy with the output of the amplifier and the speakers. We also want to make sure anything that we had aftermarket connected is reconnected and will work. So let's go ahead, turn the bike on, check and see, make sure everything is working. So connected wirelessly to my iPhone. So let's play some music, and we're gonna go ahead, go into settings, audio settings, balance and fader, and we're gonna make sure that all our speakers work independently. So my left front, left rear, right rear, and right front are working. So now everything is working, everything's on, so that's great. Also, inside all your settings, if you're happy with where your amplifier is set, you can go ahead and do some extra adjustments in the digital equalizer, depending on your radio. So let's go home, we'll double check our rear camera. That's working, perfect. Well, let's double check our radio. We're getting radio stations, we are. And let's just go to Spotify and let's turn it up a little bit. nice and loud, super crisp. So I'm pretty happy about everything that's there. Also, again, I like to leave my gains down a little bit for the first couple weeks of the speakers breaking in or just getting used to being amplified. So now I'm going to go ahead and get my antenna cleaned up and wrapped around the front part of the fairing, and we'll go ahead and get the fairing put on and bolted back in. So before we go ahead and put our fresh air duct in and our front fairing on, just need to confirm everything's wire tied, everything's clean. If you have an antenna, go ahead, get that run and just hidden however you would like. So we got that all in. So then from there we can go ahead, grab our fresh air vent, get that slid in like such. Replace the 2 T27 bolts into the side of there. So there's the first one, do the second one. You'll kind of notice that the amp sits nicely underneath that duct, so should be no problem, won't hit anything, won't hit any of our plastics. So from there we can go ahead, grab our front fairing, make sure we get our headlight plugged in. So get that plugged in and clipped. Then we're gonna gently get our front fairing into position. We're gonna use our longer middle bolt to start with. Get that bolted in first, make sure that doesn't fall off. Then we can go ahead and grab our 2 smaller bolts, get those started on either side. So now it's on. Go ahead and grab your windscreen, slide that gently in between. Get that locked down. So we're still not going to tighten this all the way up. We're going to go ahead, move to the back side of the front fairing, get those bolts in and tightened up, and then we'll come back here and tighten these up. So just remember, you're going to have 2 different size bolts holding that on. Longer goes up top of the fairing, smaller goes towards the bottom. So you can go ahead and slide those in, get them started. And then using your T27 Torx, go ahead and tighten those down. Now we can move over to the other side, get those 2 done. Now that those 2 are in, we can go ahead and start tightening up all of our front ones. And the last one here. Now that our front fairing's back on, we can hop back on the bike, turn it on, go into the radio and make any final adjustments that we would like to make before we go out on our ride. So now that I've installed our Infinity Kappa Perfect Harley-Davidson 4-speaker system, it is a significant upgrade over the factory speakers. Adding that amplifier just gave me that little extra punch to be able to really hear it while I'm on the highway at highway speeds. The ease of installation, because it is just plug and play, makes it so much easier to install in your driveway or in your garage. So if you have any questions or are looking to purchase this, please visit us at notecycles.com. And as always, guys, have a blast out there.